Welcome to the Flex Rental Solutions webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the Choose from Another List feature that you can find on the prep screen when you're prepping a job. Just to show you the scenario that I've set up here, I have one job that was a small wedding that's already been prepped. So you can see that everything's been prepped. Most of it was just audio gear. And then you can see on the manifest we had one serialized storage case that contained some items. And then some speakers, cable, and some stands. And then what we did was created a second job that had a lot of the same gear, but changed a few quantities on the cable. We removed some of the speakers and added different ones, and then also added some tape as well. So the idea behind this is that this wedding job isn't necessarily going to come back to our warehouse before it goes to this next job, the sales meeting. And there's a bunch of different scenarios that you can come up with for using this feature. In this particular one, the first job is going to have most of the same gear that needs to be used on the second job. There's only two items. I believe it was a Mackie 350 speaker that isn't on this job. But we'll show how to deal with that once we get to the prep screen. And then, like I said, some of the quantities are a little bit different too. Other scenarios might be maybe you have one wedding that's in a certain space, and then the next night, in that same exact space, you're having another wedding, and you're essentially using the same gear. So maybe the second job will be at the same exact venue, has the same exact gear, but you want to be able to scan all of the gear to that next job. And if it's never coming back to your warehouse, then you need a way to be able to scan it from job 1 to job 2. So there, like I said, quite a few different scenarios. There might be, in this particular scenario we're looking at, it's going to be a job that has more or less the same gear that's going to a different job at a different venue, but not coming back to the warehouse. So let's go to the prep screen for this sales meeting, which is our job 2. And just so you know, I will be referring to the Jones wedding primarily as job 1 and this sales meeting as job 2. So let's go to the prep screen for job 2. Now, one thing that you can do, this isn't necessarily what the webinar is about, but you can do this, is you can actually go and either virtually scan these items. In some of these cases, though, actually that wouldn't work, because if something's already scanned out and you go to virtually scan it, the items that are scanned out won't show on the virtual scan list for serialized items, so never mind, that won't work. But you can just scan the barcodes that are out on job 1. So as an example, the 450 speakers, I could go over and look at my manifest and say I scanned out 00069. So I could just go to the prep screen for job 2 and scan that barcode, and it's going to scan it back in from job 1, but then scan it out to job 2. Now that's going to be a little bit more difficult to do because you're going to need all the barcodes from the previous job, and you're not going to physically have them to scan with a barcode scanner. So you would have to refer to a list, maybe print out a manifest, and then go and manually type in each of the barcodes. That would take quite a while, so that's why we have this option that's called Choose from Another List. So I'm going to click on that, and what we're going to do is look for the manifest from job 1. So in this case, it's the Jones wedding. So we'll search, and that's going to pull up the manifest, and you can choose in the inventory menu and inventory settings, you could choose what type of elements you could choose from when you're doing a scan from another list. In this case, we only want to choose from manifests. Some people might want to choose from a purchase PO intake manifest or from a transfer order or anything like that. But for the most part, you're only going to be choosing from manifests. So in this case, you can either check, and then I believe you could click close, or you could just double click on the manifest name. And what it does is just open this new section of the prep screen that shows everything that's on the manifest for that job 1, or the Jones wedding. And then you can see that you can choose any of these items. Notice that I chose the serialized storage case and it selected everything that's inside of it. And I could choose certain items, or I could click the header and click all, and that will choose everything for me. And whatever I have selected, I can come over here and say scan selected, and that's going to scan it from the manifest here for job 1 to the prep for job 2. Now look at the way that we have this set up right now. If I scan everything, it's also going to scan these 350 speakers, which are not on the prep screen or the pull sheet for job 2. Those got removed and were replaced by these JBL speakers. And so there's a couple things you could do here. Number one, if you're just going to pick up this job 1 and bring it everything straight to job 2, then you could scan everything over to job 2. Even though these 350 speakers aren't on the pull sheet, you could still scan them over. They'll get put on the manifest for job 2, and the current location of these barcodes will show as being on job 2 or the sales meeting. But they're probably just going to sit there either in the van or the truck or just backstage at the venue because you're not actually using them on job 2. So that's one way you can do it. The other way is we could just not scan these. They won't be returned from the manifest of job 1, and they'll just come back in a separate truck or whatever to the warehouse. So everything else goes to job 2, but these ones get brought back to the warehouse. And as soon as they get brought back to the warehouse, then you scan them in just like normal, whether that be through a free scan in or by going to the return manifest for the Jones wedding and scanning them in from there. Let's go with that second method. So I'm not going to check these to scan because I don't want them to go to job 2. Now again, remember, some of the quantities were a little bit different too. So when I go to hit scan selected, it's only going to prep some of the quantity of these cables for job 2 because I only scanned a certain amount out to job 1. The last thing we want to look at briefly is the mode over here. This, at least in my testing, it doesn't really seem to affect the way that things are being scanned from the manifest to the next job. Really, all this mode is doing is kind of showing you what has been either returned from this job 1 manifest or prepped. So for example, if I choose mode of prep and then say hide all prepped items, it's not going to show anything because everything has technically been prepped on this manifest. But if I go to return, maybe some of this stuff from job 1 has already been returned. And so let's say that these 350 speakers, in fact, let's do that as a test. Let's go to free scan in, and I'm going to scan in 00085 and 00082. And so let's say that these 350s came back maybe just in somebody's car, while the rest of the job, the rest of all of these items, got loaded in a truck and is going to job 2. And so now if I do a refresh here, let's reload the tab. And I might have to toggle this and say hide returned items. Now you can see that the 350s have disappeared. They're no longer an option to choose from because I'm in the return mode and I'm hiding returned items. So again, the mode isn't going to affect if I choose all of these and then scan them over to this next list. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do anything different than if I were in prep mode. All that's doing is just telling Flex how to display the items that are on the manifest. Do I want to show return items and hide the returned items? Or do I want it to show prep and hide the prepped items? So again, because I already scanned in those SRM 350s, it's not showing because I am in mode return, and it's hiding all the returned items, things that I've already returned to the warehouse. So let's just go ahead with the actual scanning now. I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to hit scan selected. Now, a word of advice that I like to give people, we have had some reports in the past of very large manifests showing a few bugs when you're trying to scan everything over to a new pull sheet. So a lot of times we recommend scanning things over in groups. If you have a very large manifest, you might want to say, let's just scan 15, 20 items at a time, or maybe scan audio subtotal first and then video. I know that we've done quite a bit of work on this, and we have improved some of those bugs and performance issues. So it might work better now if you have a large manifest, but if you're finding that you're having trouble scanning a very large manifest over all at the same time, you might want to break that up into some smaller chunks. But for the most part, choosing all and scanning the selected over is going to work just fine. So let's do that here. I chose all already, so everything's checked. And now I'm going to say scan selected. Flex is going to ask, do you want to execute a bulk scan for these items? And I'm going to say yes. And if you have your volume turned up loud, you might hear a lot of dinging and confirmation noises and things like that. So it might be a good idea to just turn it down while you do that, especially if you have a very large list. And notice, again, because I was requiring more on job 2, it only scanned over the amount that was on the manifest for job 1, and I'm going to have to prep the rest for job 2. So in this case, the scenario is everything is moving from job 1 to job 2, but I still need to prep a few extra items to send out to job 2. So there might be a small van that's transporting this to job 2, but then I'm also sending another car or truck with the extra items that have to go to job 2 because they weren't on job 1. One thing that I have seen some customers do, if you do a little bit of pre-planning and you know that everything from this job is going straight to the next job and nothing's coming back to the warehouse, I've seen some of our customers that will actually prep everything to job 1, even if it's not going to be used on job 1. But if it's going to be used on job 2, they would have prepped it to job 1. So in that example, we would have prepped these JBLs to job 1, even though they weren't required, just because we know they're going to job 2 and we don't have another truck that's leaving the warehouse to go to job 2. So everything gets prepped and put on the manifest to job 1 so that you could use the choose from another list to scan all of that over to job 2. We didn't do that in this example. In this example, like I said before, one truck is taking everything from job 1, but then we're sending a separate truck with the extra items. So in this case, I would prep the extra items I'm sending. So the tape, I'll prep 4 more of the XLR that need to go. And so this is just like a normal prep at this point. And then I would scan each of the barcodes for the JBLs that are going out as well. I'll just do a quick virtual scan just for the sake of time. All right, I only needed 4, so I'll scan out 4. And then I can finalize here. So a couple things that we want to look at before we finish. Number 1, if we go back to the Jones Wedding return manifest, so let's go to warehouse return manifest. We're going to pull up Jones Wedding. You'll notice that everything got returned. When I did that choose from another list on the prep, everything that I scanned from job 1 to job 2 was returned on the manifest for job 1. What it doesn't do, or what Flex doesn't do automatically, is finalize that return. And so this manifest is still going to sit in the prepped status until I hit finalize. So again, that's something that's not going to be automatic. Even if you prep everything or choose from another list, every item from one manifest, and that all goes over to another manifest, you still have to open the manifest for job 1 and finalize that. And again, you notice that the 350s that I scanned in separately were also returned separately. So let's go back to the prep here, and we already finalized that prep as well. And if we were looking at the, in fact, let's go back to the pull sheet and open one of these items. And we just want to look at the scan log so you can kind of see what happens to the scan log. So we had prep that went out to the Jones wedding. And then for each barcode, so 00069, it was returned from the Jones wedding and it was prepped to sales meeting. And that was all done just with that one checking and then scanning selected. That did the return and the prep for the next job. And then if we go to the manifest, of course, everything that we prepped from the manifest of job 1 is now showing on the manifest of job 2. And so that's how you can use the choose from another list feature. If you have multiple jobs too, let's unfinalize this prep really quick. And maybe you have 3 or 4 jobs that are all going to job 2. None of them are coming back to the warehouse. I could go back over to choose from another list. And then I could find another job. I know I had a couple other weddings that happened. Oh, they've all been returned, but if any of these were still prepped and not returned and they're going to straight to job 2, then I could open any of those and it would show all of the items on that manifest as well. So I could go through 2, 3, 4 different jobs, open the manifest for those old jobs and prep them to job 2. So if you have any questions about using this feature, first we always recommend going over to our forum. There's a lot of great users over there who talk about their experiences in using Flex, some of their best practices, and the experiences that they've had using specific features. If you are having any technical issues with this feature and have any questions there, then please email support@flexrentalsolutions.com.